Well, Belgorod is just on the other side of the border with Ukraine and Kharkiv. That's where a lot of Indian students are there too. This is the easternmost part of Ukraine, right next to Russia. But many believe that the Russian ingress will not be official through its own soldiers, but those dressed in green, and they may actually enter from Belarus because that's closer to Kiev from the Chernobyl, that region where you also have the straits going right up with the waters. Let's try and understand this with Pathikrit Pine and also Ambassador Ashok Sajjanhar. Ambassador Sajjanhar, let me first ask you this. This is a tricky one for India because on the one hand, we're getting closer to the United States, but on the other hand, Russia are one of our oldest friends. And we've abstained from voting either way so far.
Oh, yes, I think it is a bit of a dilemma, but I think we've handled it very well, Anand. As you said very rightly, we have excellent relations, comprehensive global strategic partnership with the United States. And for the last 2 decades, particularly, this partnership has grown and it covers all areas of human activity and endeavor. It's education, renewables, high-tech, et cetera, and also defense now has become the second largest supplier of high-tech defense equipment to India. And of course, as far as Russia is concerned, it is a time-tested partner. Our relations with Russia, that's a very important pillar of our foreign policy. And about 12 years ago in 2010, we upgraded this relationship to a special and privileged strategic partnership. So both of them are excellent friends, partners, and we have different areas of cooperation, collaboration. And even with Russia, it is increasing. We've seen how Putin came to India on the 6th of December for the summit. Yeah. So we have taken a neutral position. We've taken a middle of the road position, and we are advising both our friends, both our partners that they should engage in diplomacy, they should engage in dialogue, in talks, and try to settle this whole matter. Because I don't think that it is beyond the genius of human creativity and inventiveness to find a way in which what we call the legitimate security interests of both sides.
But Ambassador Saab, for somebody with your experience, you would also know that this is a lot of psyops or asymmetric positioning and posturing which Russia is doing. If Russia really wanted to invade Ukraine, they would have done it the way they tried to approach what they did with Crimea. Now, at that time also they used a lot of asymmetric warfare, a lot of psyops. We see those psyops on display, but this time the troop buildup is stated. Do you see a pattern which is similar to what they did with Crimea? Or this time around they just want to ensure they are able to browbeat Ukraine into steering clear of NATO?
Anand, a very important and very significant question that you've raised. I think it's not only a question of browbeating Ukraine. It's also a question of browbeating the West and sending a very clear message to the West that they should not accept Ukraine as a member of NATO. So it is, Ukraine might keep on asking for membership. But I think Russia, in addition to a large number of other reasons why it would not wish to invade, because, its economy is in doldrums. It has seen what are the sort of sanctions that were imposed on it in 2014 when it went into Crimea, et cetera, et cetera. And, any sanctions from the West will throw Russia further into the embrace of China, which is something definitely it would not want, notwithstanding what Putin and Xi Jinping have said. But in addition to all of this, if the first shot were to be fired, if an attack were to take place, I think NATO would be forced to accept Ukraine as a member. So, the major point on which Russia is fighting, that Ukraine and Georgia, Moldova, etc., should not be made members of NATO. If there is an invasion, I don't think there's any way that NATO will be able to refuse the membership, its membership to Ukraine. So I think it will be sort of, cutting its nose to spite its face. It wants to attack Ukraine. What will it get out of it? Nothing at all. And its economy will be shattered. Strategically, it might think that it has, won some points. But I think over over the medium and long term, as far as its image is concerned, as far as its credibility is concerned, it will suffer very heavily, and Ukraine will be squarely in the will become a member of NATO. So
Well,
I don't think it will be able to gain anything. There will be no benefits to Russia, and I think Mr. Putin recognizes this very well, even without firing a single shot. In my view, by all these maneuvers and psyops and this brinkmanship. In my view, Mr. Putin has already attained the major element of his campaign, which is to ensure that Ukraine does not become a member of NATO,
Right.
Unless he were to invade, and then everything is going to be up in the air.
Well, but the fact is that it's already a quasi-member of NATO, although officially not part of it. It's accepted so much of help from the Americans and from Europe and from the West that it's already there. And the public mood is also not that they want to go back to Russia. They want to move towards their pro-democracy in their attitude. Patikrit Pain. So how does Russia play this out? Because it's also mobilizing in Moldova, it's mobilizing in Belarus, and this is all erstwhile Soviet Union. There is a certain aspiration to bring Russia back to its glory days or get back all that it belonged to it. There is Estonia on top also, which will be on the radar next.
Anand, there's a precedence that we should all remember. That precedence is of 2008, when Georgia was decimated by Russia because Georgia had similar aspirations, seduced by NATO to become part of NATO. And when Georgia was invaded by Russia, Putin was enjoying the Beijing Olympic inauguration with George Bush, and America did nothing. In Crimea, also the same thing happened. Look, this war, if it happens, Putin has factored in all the eventualities. Today, the dollar-denominated trade that Russia does is less than 10% of its GDP. Number two, it has kept its reserves well. We should not forget one thing, Anand. Russia might look as an aggressor right now, but it is behaving exactly in the manner America would have behaved if Russia had put strategic offensive weapon systems in the Canada-America border with Canada as a strategic partner. Number three, let's understand, wars are won by a country which is willing to accept body bags. Today, Russia, from the time of World War II, we have seen this is a country which is not scared of sacrificing lives for the sake of sovereignty. And today, if you look at the West, for all the grand lectures that they give, are they willing to accept body bags? Is America willing to accept body bags? Would France have body bags back home? Their presidents will lose the next election. They won't even stand a chance. There can be midterm election. Secondly, Ukraine is banking on the NATO support. NATO, we have seen what happened 6 months back in Afghanistan. They can't even defeat Taliban. Russia is not like that. Their thought process is not like the Western thought process. They suffered the maximum during Second World War. 80%, this is what Putin said to the Germans, 80% of Nazi army was decimated by the Germans, he said. And they suffered, the Americans joined, their soldiers came in Normandy in 1944. From 41 to 44, Russia was the one fighting it out. From nowhere, it actually reached the stage where they invaded, reached till Berlin and actually killed, destroyed the Nazi foundation. Another very important, is NATO willing to actually send soldiers? No. Is NATO giving offensive weapon systems? No. So what are they doing? Even today, the Ukraine economy is far more integrated to the Russian economy than the European economy. They will not make Ukraine part of European Union. They will not take care of the Ukrainian economy. They will not invest money over there to create the infrastructure. That is the problem. And last but not the least, also, let's understand this thing, Putin understands these things. If the Americans are banking on the presumption that no, there will be a problem with Russia's image, or sanctions will create a problem. Look, there are enough sanctions on Russia already, countering American adversaries to sanctions. That Katsa is on Russia. Russia has factored everything. I mean, let me tell you one thing. I am not in favor of war, but Russia has been working on it for the last 5 years. And they have done the homework. They know. And so look at the American psyche today, 30 years after the Cold War has ended. If they still believe that Russia is their biggest adversary, when you have a huge problem with Islamic terrorism or China, then there is something fundamentally problem with the West. And are they willing to actually fight it out? Eventually one thing Anand will decide. The Russians are committed to fight it out. the Americans or the West is not. So diplomacy will, dialogue for the sake of dialogue may not work. Today, a little bit of de-escalation or withdrawal that the Russians are showing is
Right.
that they don't have a territorial ambition of annexing